Wade, morning again.
Good morning, Lagos. Good morning, DeFi. Welcome to Business of brought to you by Nairametrics in partnership with Classic FM 97.3 and sponsored by Unity Bank. We have a very interesting guest today who is going to talk to us about funding and how you can get funding and a few other things that would have to relate to how you can best put together things required for you to grow a business and put a business together. His name is Kelechi Nwokocha, but if I is back to you to do the full introductions.
All right. Once again, we have Kelechi Nwokocha here with us. He's the CEO of Bongalow. He's formerly a special assistant to the Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment. Kelechi is one of Nigeria's leading technology investors, having invested in and managed over 15 startups, including 9 fintech ventures. He's worked at various capacities, including as an executive at a $40 million funded, we say, media tech startup, and as a technology banking lead at a top Nigerian bank, where he established the first technology commercial banking desk in the country. Well, once again, good morning and good to have you here, Kelechi Nwokocha.
Hi, good morning, guys. Good morning.
From the very start, Kelechi, what exactly is Bongalow? And the name sounds really nice. Where did the name come from?
Yeah, so Bungalow is actually misspelled. It actually comes from the original name, Bungalow with the U. So instead of the U, we use the O. Everyone knows what a bungalow is. And obviously it aligns with like what we're trying to do.
Is there any reason why you chose that? Can you hit it for us?
Well, I mean, I think when you're trying to start a company, you really need a name that people can remember, particularly for, a space like ours, right? It's a bit boring, sometimes. But when you mention the name once, right, anyone can remember, right? So we needed a really good, catchy name. You don't want the name to be too long, right? So Bongalow is something that everyone knows about. So it definitely fits our market.
Okay.
What was the inspiration behind you setting up Bongalow? Doing business in Nigeria is it takes a lot. So what inspired you to get into setting up Bongalow, and what will Bongalow be able to do for Nigeria? And
yeah. So just a backstory. Bungalow was originally called My Away Home. So My Away Home was targeting, Africa's abroad. So whether you're in the US or in the UK, and you're looking to buy land, for example, right? So in, 10 years ago, when my mom was trying to buy land in the country, the agents that she was working with essentially took the money and didn't do, anything with it. So she lost a substantial amount of money. And I think that was the beginning of the original name, right? My Away Home, right? I'm far in the US, my home is away, right? So that's actually how we started. So we decided that, there needs to be a dedicated platform that allows the diaspora, to source for the land that they need, right? If I want to buy a house, for example, I need a trusted platform that I can trust to find that thing, right? So we set up in that way. There was also another issue, right? The diaspora didn't have a way of taking out money, to buy these things, right? So in the last few years, if you're gonna do anything in Nigeria, you're probably gonna buy land first and then build it across 7 to 10 years. That's what folks abroad have normally done. So we convinced some of the banks to sort of give us a facility. Let's go out to create home loans for folks abroad. That's actually how we started. So we're doing home loans, mortgages for people living abroad, right? So if you want to buy a property in Nigeria, you would come to us, right? We'll source for that property and we will get you the funds, right? For the banks, someone who's living in a diaspora is earning in dollars, right? So it sort of makes sense. However, when we started as My Way Home, we realized that the demand in Nigeria was much more. I mean, folks in Nigeria, if you think about it, most people in Nigeria would probably buy land and build, or you probably do one of these off plan things, right? Where you sort of wait for the developer to build, right? And you keep paying. So mortgages have a sort of like, you know, a lot of people don't have mortgages, and I will sort of go into, you know, some of the reasons why that is. But mortgages is not something that's too common, right? Interest rates are quite high. The fees are quite high. But in Nigeria, we saw that, you know, no one really knew like the best way to get it, right? And no one really wants to sort of like walk into a bank branch, right? And also, even if you walk into a GT Bank, for example, to get a home loan, how do you know that the terms you're getting is the best term, you know, in the market? How do you know that that loan that you're getting is the best term, you know, in the market, you know, for you? So when you apply through Bongalow, when you apply for a home loan on Bongalow, once you apply, we take your application and we'll tell you what each of our banking partners is willing to give you. Some banks will give you 20 million, some banks will give you 30 million. Aside from the loan size, some banks will say, you know, here's 16%, interest rate. Other banks will say, you know, here's, 13%, right? Other banks will say, hey, we can't do anything in this state. Like, there's no way for you to know. So you need to come to bongalow.com, which is where you apply, and we tell you, you know, hey, these are the loans that you qualify for. Bank A, Bank B is willing to do this for you. Bank C is willing to do this for you. And then you review your offers. You select which offer, you know, you select the best offer for you. Once you select the best loan offer, we now tell you, you know what, you know, there's a series of, you know, documentations that you need to bring forward, right? So we guide you throughout that process. You know, we broker the deal. So our job is to ensure that you get that home loan. That's really what, you know, Bongalow does.
Okay, your services now, let's say, for example, I'm interested in Bongalow's services. Do I have to pay a fee?
So we don't charge a fee until you get your mortgage agreement, right? So Bongalow is actually completely free. Like, we make money, you know, on the commission. So we charge a rate on the size of the loan. That's once you get the loan. So we don't charge anything, you know, up front.
You know, speaking of, based on what Ifeanyi said about how you make money, first and foremost, with banking rates already, you know, shooting through the roof, how have you been able to put together a system that you will make money through? You will be able to provide the required brokerage assistance to people who need to get these services, because things are already very expensive.
Yep. So interest rates are high. So the one thing that interest rate does in Nigeria is that it doesn't necessarily mean that your monthly payments, when you're repaying these home loans, it doesn't necessarily mean that your monthly payments are high. So the mortgage banks, right, if you're gonna give a mortgage in the country, you have to make sure that the loan size, right, does not end up exceeding 33% of your monthly take home. No bank, no mortgage bank will give you a loan size that will put you in a position where the monthly payments exceeds, you know, 33% of like what you take home, right? That's the number one rule. But what interest rates do is that interest rates reduce the loan size you can get. So if you're somebody, in fact, on bongalow.com, you can actually go and type in, you know, how much you make a month, right? And we'll tell you what loan size that you're likely to get. So for someone who's making like ₦1 million a month, you know, the loan size you're probably going to get is like 20 to 23 million naira, right? For some people, that's not a lot of money, because if you have 23 million naira, you want to buy a house for 50 million naira, you're going to need to go and find a 30 million naira. So the interest rates actually impact the loan size you can get. The interest rate doesn't impact whether or not, your monthly payments is too high, right? Because it's going to be capped at 33% of like, you know, what you make. But ultimately, your loan size is going to be limited, right? Because that loan size needs to exactly match, 33% of like, you know, what you make. So interest rate actually affects loan size, which means you need to bring more money to the table.
How difficult is it to set up a business like Bongalow? Do you need physical offices, or you're strictly online? And what's your staff strength?
Sure. So we have an office in Lagos. We're currently 15. We're roughly 1 year old. In terms of like the level of difficulty in terms of like setting up this business, it's very, asset light. So, you don't really need much. I think what's time consuming is going door to door and knocking on each bank and telling them, hey, like, let's do this thing, right? That's the most difficult part. You need to sort of like gather the banks together, and you're going to be running on cash for a while, right? Because if you're trying to get a mortgage for someone, it can take like, 2 to 3 months, right? Sometimes we get a customer, but the customer's not ready to sort of like do business today. So I'll spend money on marketing, right? To get that customer, but that customer might want to actually do the transaction in the next, 6 months. So sometimes we get customers today, but the revenue sort of like, we will see the revenue in the next, 3 to 6 months. So you do need to have the initial capital, to get started in this business, and you need to sort of like bring all the banks together. It's not easy to bring all the banks together.
You mentioned something about initial capital. How do you source capital, or where did you source capital, and how has it been for you sourcing capital to, like you said, it takes a bit of time for you to start making money from a transaction. It could take 3, 6 months. It could even take a year. So how have you been able to fund this business over the last 1 year? And what would be your recommendations in terms of how you get funds towards starting up a business?
Yeah. So you don't need to have your product built completely to source for capital. A lot of people make that mistake. There are investors out there, global investors, that are willing to do at the idea stage, right? The idea, if an investor is going to invest in you at the very early stage, they're almost investing in you. They're not even investing in your business. They're investing in you. They trust that you're going to do exactly what you told them, right? So for us, we actually raised money before we even built the product. We were out in the market. I had a presentation. We scanned the website, like scan the web, right? Read, find out, if this company raised money, who are the people that have given that company money? At what stage was that company? Get on LinkedIn, reach out to them, right? You're going to send 1,000 emails, right? 10 is going to get back to you, right? So don't be discouraged, right? When we were sending emails, we sent about like 500 to 600, right? 10 people got back to us, right? And out of those 10 people, 3 ended up, investing. And this was before we even had a product. So you need to be very willing, right? When people say no to you, it's not the end of the world, right? Most people will say no to you, right? Especially if you don't have a product ready. Even if you have a product ready, even if you have traction, people will still say no to you. So get comfortable with hearing no, but don't let that stop you, right? So if you're starting off your business right now, you can raise money. You can raise money, right? Investors all have a different view. You need to find the investor that aligns with your view, right? So keep looking. Use the internet. The internet is your best friend, right? Read the articles. Which company has raised? Who are the people behind that company, right? Find them online. Reach out to them. That's sort of like what we did. So we initially raised, we raised a six-figure check, and right now, we're back in the market, trying to raise more.
Okay, you mentioned the challenge of getting your revenues instantly, especially with your customers. What are the challenges are you facing?
Yep. So the other challenge that we're facing is usually at the beginning stages, you think you have the product figured out, right? And then the market teaches you that you don't have the product figured out. So that's the thing about startups. Like, you need to be in a position to tweak the product as fast as possible. The market will tell you what you need to do. So if your initial, idea is correct, right? The market will sort of like, start to align, right? Customers will say, okay, great idea, but I need more, or I need this. So with one of the biggest challenges we're facing right now in the mortgage market is that, affordability is an issue. So affordability in the sense that if you're going to buy a 100 million naira home, the minimum down payment you need to bring to the table is roughly, 20%. That's 20 million naira. The savings culture in Nigeria is quite low. So for a lot of people who qualify for a loan, they might not have enough funds, for the down payment. The down payment is just one part of it. If you're gonna take out a mortgage, you need to have the down payment. Then you also need to have enough money for the closing costs. So the closing costs are things like, fees the banks are going to charge, right? Is the title perfection cost, right? When you buy property, you need to perfect it in your own name. So when you look at the closing cost can be 5 to 10% on top of the down payment. So if you're going to buy a house, you need to have 30% at the very maximum, 30% of the property value, right? A lot of people don't have that amount of money, right? If I'm buying a 50 million naira home, I'm going to need to bring at least like, 10 to 15 million, to the table, right? It's very, very, very high. So that's the biggest challenge we're facing. And we are, I'm going to speak a little bit about like what we're doing about that. So, in the next 3 months, we're rolling out a new product, rent to own. So under our rent to own program, the idea is that, Bungalow becomes your landlord, right? You become, you will become the renter. So what we do is that we buy the property, you bring in 10%. So instead of 20%, you bring in 10%. We will pay for 90%. And then within the first 3 years, you're expected to save up enough that you've repaid, 20% of the property value, which enables us to then pass it to the mortgage bank. So we will give you, if you don't have that 20%, we will allow you to sort of like pay down like a 10% rate. We will pay for the remaining of the house. And then within 3 years, you should have paid back, 20%, which would then allow us to sort of like move you to the traditional mortgage banks. That's something that we're going to be doing in the next, 2 to 3 months.
You mentioned something about the costs you said were additional to aside from the down payment that you had to make. Could you just explain? Could you give us a list of some of those things and explain the intricacies of how those costs come about and what the effects are in terms of the total cost of getting a mortgage?
Sure. So outside of the down payments, right, 20% is actually the lowest you see in the market. Some mortgage banks will say bring as high as 30%, right? So once again, if you walk into a bank and a bank tells you, oh, bring as high as like 30%, you wouldn't know that there's another bank that's willing to do much lower, right? So that's why you want to use us, right? So outside of the down payments, fee that you have to make, so your agents, the person who helped you source for the property is probably going to charge you 3 to 5%, right? The bank is probably going to charge you 2%, right, on the size of the loan. The bank is also going to charge things like, valuation costs, legal search, right? And then the biggest expense in closing costs is there are two big expenses. So the title perfection cost. Title perfection just means that this property is sort of like in your name, right? So you need to bring in lawyers, you need to make sure that the property is like under your name. And that's a process, right? Typically that costs 5% of the property value, right? It depends on the state, right? And then the last cost is the mortgage, registration costs, right? So the bank has to register the property, as a mortgage. That's a different fee, right? So that fee can be 2 to 3% of the property value. So very easily, your closing costs can well be 10% of the property value. So it's not just the down payment, it's also the closing costs associated with the transaction.
All right, we have questions here from our listeners. It says from KRS Anus, it says, please ask your guest, how has the Nigerian market received Bongalow? And how many requests periodically? And what are the success rates in terms of loan being granted? And what are the requirements?
Yep. So in terms of our success rate, so right now we have a pipeline of $10 million. So that pipeline, the way we look at our pipeline is these are customers that have come to us and they're ready to do business. So we're right now originating over $10 million. We've originated, mortgages in the past, both for folks in Nigeria and folks abroad. It typically takes 6 to 10 weeks to get a mortgage. I mean, that's assuming that you have all of your papers, right? The bank is going to ask for your, employment contract. The bank is going to ask for your bank statements, for example. But it normally takes 6 to 10 weeks. So we have a pretty strong track record. We work with about 15 banks. So when you're looking at your offer, you're going to get offers from 15 different banks. And then I think the other question was around, sorry, if you can remind me, just making sure I answer everything.
Okay, the other question, he mentioned something about what are the requirements for actually getting.
I think he said some things about the requirements, your bank statement.
Yes, the requirements,
Yeah. So the biggest thing for the individual is to prove your source of income. I think that's the biggest thing. So your source of income, and you need to bring your credit report, right? Your credit report will show how leveraged you are. You know, how much debt how much debt does this person have, right? Because the bank is not going to want to give you, loan if you already have, a lot of debts, or if you have a history of not repaying your debt. So it's about your source of income, proof of source of income, and and your credit history. Those are the main things. And then the third most important thing is presenting the title documents of that property, which is another challenge in the market. Maybe I'll speak about that much later.
Well, time is never a friend. And the show, we're out of time, but we have like 30 seconds, am I right?
Yeah, I mean, we can squeeze in one more question that says, can this process be done online, or you have to be present physically?
No, everything is done from the comfort of your home. You can do it online. In fact, you don't need to enter any bank branch. Everything is done online. If you want to upload your documents, it's done online. If you want to see like your loan terms, it's done online. If you want to see different loan offers from different banks, it's done online. Applications online. Repayments of the mortgage is online as well.
Okay, so quickly, where do you see Bongalow in 10 years? And once you do that, then you also tell us how they can reach out to Bongalow. And then if I will take the last bit of it.
Sure. So Bongalow is going to be a digital bank that's going to target, homeowners. So we're actually building a mobile banking app right now that allows you to save for a property, allows you to sort of like shop for a mortgage. So we want to be the #1 name in the mortgage market. Right now, I'm sure no one can name who's the biggest, mortgage bank in the country. So no one sort of like, is a leader in this space yet. And we think that we have the opportunity to be that leader.
So how can people reach out to Bongalows?
Sure. So go on www.bongalow.com. So that's Bongalow without the U, is BON. By the way, we're on social media. If you search for us on Instagram, Twitter, but Bongalow.com does a very good job. Our phone numbers are there. Doesn't matter where you are in the US, UK, or here. Our information is online. So simply www.bongalow.com.
All right, Kelechi, before we go, what is your guiding lights? That quote that gets you going, in the morning, when you wake up in the morning, what is it that guides your day?
Yeah, impossible is nothing, right? Impossible really is nothing. So we limit ourselves depending on what we believe that, we can do, but impossible is nothing.
Thank you very much, Kelechi. Kelechi Nwokocha, CEO of Bongalow. Uwa?
Thank you, Lagos, for listening to us again. You heard what Kelechi says. Impossible is nothing. Good morning, Lagos. Thanks, Ifeanyi, for being there. As always, have a great day. And this has been Business of R. Bye.